Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and my first video on comparing Azur to the real life battleships or destroyers or whatever it's based off of. As you guys might know or might not know, Azur is a game based on warships, but the ships are actually girls like these here. This is French battleship Jean Bart. And also French battleship Richelieu. And so it's basically warships that are anthropomorphized into these girls, is what it is. And so I wanted to go over some facts and stuff like that on their real life counterparts that the game got right, or maybe that was missed, or a line that they say. So, anyways, let's go ahead and let's get into it with Battleship South Dakota, one of my favorites, both in terms of the character design in the game and just her in real life counterpart. So this is Battleship South Dakota right here. As you can see, the whole number is 57. Her full designation would be BB-57 or USS South Dakota. And so she is unique in the fact that she was the first battleship to be designed with 16-inch guns in mind from ground up. Now, maybe someone says, well, the North Carolinas had 16-inch guns. Yes, but that was after the hull was laid down, after the ship was starting to be built and everything else. And the reason for that was the North Carolinas were originally intended to obey by the Second London Naval Treaty, which stated that no battleship could be over 35,000 tons and have more than 14-inch guns for caliber. Now, the U.S. they insisted on a clause being put in called an escalator clause that said that if any of the signatory countries of the Washington Naval Treaty refused to sign the London Naval Agreement, the second one, by 1936 or 1939 or something like that, that the countries could then bring their armaments up to 16-inch guns and go that route. And so it was done. The Japanese and Italians refused to sign the Second London Naval Treaty, and the U.S. Activated the escalator clause and swapped out the 14-inch guns in the North Carolinas that weren't yet put into the barbettes for 16-inch guns that they'd had also been developing just in case, which was a good thing. And so the North Carolinas did end up getting 16-inch guns as well. But the South Dakota class was laid down with 16-inch guns in mind. There was no 14-inch gun in mind for the South Dakotas. So that being a big difference. And because of that, the South Dakota class, South Dakota herself was actually classified pretty highly. And in the war and stuff, newspapers reported her as Battleship X or just the battleship. The Navy didn't tell them her name or anything like that because of this classification. That she was designed with 16-inch guns. Her armor was therefore different than North Carolina's because typically when a battleship was being built, their armor was built to withstand guns of that same caliber that they had. So 16-inch guns, the battleship would typically have armor that can withstand a 16-inch round hitting it. And so in theory, South Dakota was supposed to have thicker armor than the North Carolinas, which she actually really didn't. Because with a battleship, it's a triangle. It's gun caliber, speed, and armor, and you can't really have all three without sacrificing something. And so with the South Dakotas, it was the armor. They got a 16-inch gun. And the reason they needed to do this was to keep up with our carriers. Still to this day, entire fleets are built around the carrier. But yeah, so that's one of the biggest reasons why this fast battleship. So they sacrificed armor, but they didn't want the enemy to know that. They wanted the enemy to think that this battleship still had armor capable of withstanding from whatever distance, whereas South only had 12-inch armor on the thickest part. What it did have was slopes. So the Navy designers gave it sloped edges, so slope here on the bulge here, and the magazines and stuff like that. From a distance, this armor worked well, as I'll show you. It did protect the innards and stuff like that, and it could deflect rounds due to the round having to travel up and come down. It had a higher chance of deflecting off the side. Now, as the ship got closer, obviously the trajectory doesn't have to go as high or anything like that. It can go straighter, and if it's going straighter, it's going to hit without the slope. And has a higher chance of penetrating. So the Navy was hoping that the speed of the battleship could keep it at a far enough distance from its adversaries, and with its big guns, it could hit, because the guns could shoot a projectile up to like 20 miles or something like that. It's insane. So, vast distance, it can fire these big guns, and hopefully it could disable the other ship before the other ship can get in close to penetrate the battleship's armor. And it worked out well, as like I said, as you'll see. So, anyways, the biggest difference too between her and her three sisters, Indiana and Alabama and Massachusetts, is these 5-inch guns on the side here, 5-inch dual guns in dual mount turrets. Her sisters had 5 on each side. As you can see, South Dakota only has 4. And this was because she was designed to be fleet flagship as well. So she's got an extra layer in her superstructure, which adds weight. And so they decided to take off 1 gun from each side and give her a total of 8. So she's got 16 5-inch guns and dual turrets. Her main armament, though, the 16-inch guns, she's got obviously 9 16-inch guns in 3 triple mounts and 2 in the super firing forward. And 1 in the aft. So it's a lot of tonnage that she's slinging out with a full broadside. And you would not want to be on the receiving end of that, obviously, as Kirishima will find out eventually. So, with that said, this is the Azur Lane version of South Dakota. So she's got her triple guns and her the side of her, and more triple guns here, and stuff like that. So her sisters ended up getting 5 on each side. They didn't have the extra layer on the superstructure, so they could accommodate the extra weight of the gun. So they had a total of 10. Still had the 9 in the guns here, the turrets. But that was the biggest difference between the two, and the North Carolinas and all that. So, moving on, I do want to cover the AA real quick. So AA, and I'm only going to cover at what she had at the end of the war, because she did switch armaments pretty frequently. As far as the AA goes, the Navy was constantly adding and getting rid of, because they found some of the smaller caliber AA just was not effective at stopping kamikazes and things like that. It just didn't pack the punch and the stopping power that some of the larger calibers did. So they ended up getting rid of those. But by the end of the war, she has 72 or 20 millimeter Oricons and 68 40 millimeter Bofors guns. And the Bofors were the big stoppers, the heavy hitters. 40 millimeter rounds are pretty big. So those were the heavy hitters. And obviously 72 and 68, that's a lot of AA that she's putting down. That's why these ships were so key to carrier escorts, because they were basically these floating fortresses of just firepower. There was times when they would be escorting carrier, they'd come under attack, and these battleships were putting so much AA flak into the air, and all the smoke coming from their guns and stuff, that people thought they were on fire from other ships. So the radio would say, "Hey, are you on fire?" And it's just their AA they were shooting up into the air. They just had so much of it. So, anyways, her most notable event. I'm gonna go into the game now here. South Dakota in game, and we're gonna go to her skill, strongest shield. So this is one I want to talk about today. And by the way, mine is named Battleship X. I just have the names turned off, but yeah, I actually did name her Battleship X. So, the notable event would be going into the Second Battle of Guadalcanal, when we only had Enterprise left as our sole carrier in the Pacific, is after Hornet had been sunk. Um, Halsey was pretty low on ships, things like that. That we learned of a nice sized Japanese force coming to try and stop the invasion of the islands. And so he dispatched all he could, which was 2 battleships and 4 destroyers. 2 battleships being South Dakota, and her the class right before her, which was North Carolina class, but it was the USS Washington, BB-57. And so these 2 battleships and 4 destroyers were dispatched, part of Task Force 64. And they were supposed to intercept Kondo's force of 1 battleship being Kirishima, 2 heavy cruisers being Tagao and Takao, 2 light cruisers being Sendai, and what's the other one? Nagara, I think Nagara, something like, I can't remember which one it is. I think it's Nagara. Nagara, yeah, Nagara. I'm just gonna call it that. Anyways, and 9 destroyers. I don't know them. One of them I think is Ayanami, but the rest I'm not sure. It's 8 destroyers. Anyways, they ended up intercepting. It was a night battle. Washington and South Dakota picked up Kondo's fleet first because they both had radar. The Japanese did not have radar. And so we detected them first, and trained the targets and started firing. Battle went on. The Japanese ended up sinking or severely damaging our 4 destroyers, and forced the Washington and South Dakota to take evasive action, with the destroyers being in front of them. Washington made the right move and went behind the burning destroyer. South Dakota had to make the wrong move and go in front of the burning destroyer, which created a silhouette of the battleship. So fire in the back, or a light source in the back, shadow dark thing in the front. It's going to silhouette it and light it up, kind of. This allowed the Japanese to basically hone in. They put their searchlights on her and lit her up like the 4th of July, to use an analogy. She took 26 to 27 hits from all size caliber guns, from Kirishima's 14-inch guns to some of the heavy cruisers, their 8-inch guns, stuff like that. I forgot a key detail. Prior to all this, South Dakota also lost power. Some say it was due to a maintenance worker not following safety procedures. With South Dakota being launched in June 7th of 1941, she didn't really have time to do a proper shakedown, testing, fix any problems that they did find, and stuff like that. And so they did keep maintenance people on board to kind of keep working through the glitches and the kinks and all that stuff, to get her up to speed and moving efficiently and stuff, because they did have some problems with their engines, some vibrations and stuff at speed. And so with all that happening, she did lose power, communication, her turrets, basically to the whole ship just went dark. So basically just a floating target at that point. Now you can kind of start seeing why the strongest shield is her skill. She literally just tanked battleship rounds, heavy cruiser rounds, anything they could throw at her. Luckily, she wasn't hit with any torpedoes, because Type 93 long lances are a very deadly weapon. One of the most potent torpedoes of the war. But she was pummeled pretty good. This left Washington, though, pretty much untouched. Like, the Japanese fleet just forgot all about her, and the fact that they didn't have radar didn't help. This allowed her to kind of creep up to the Japanese fleet, Kirishima in particular, train her guns on Kirishima, make sure that it was not the South Dakota that they were going to fire at. And how they did that was, well, when Kirishima fired her rounds, they knew that it wasn't South Dakota, and so they said enemy confirmed, and let loose on nine guns. Kirishima was definitely hit by those 9 guns in the first salvo. Some say she was hit for up to 20 times with 16-inch guns. Either way, she was disabled, and she later sunk and capsized after that battle with Washington. And if you look here, let's see, Washington actually has a skill that coincides with South Dakota's because they were in battle together. This one here, Night of the Iron Bottom Sound. Iron Bottom Sound is where they fought. It's called that because of all the wrecks and stuff that are beneath there from all the battle. Anyways, activates when South Dakota's HP falls below, yada yada yada. So she is coupled with South Dakota, and that's the reason, because they both fought together in Iron Bottom Sound, and Washington did back up South Dakota on that day. Oops. And so South Dakota later did end up escaping the battle. She was pretty severely damaged, but it wasn't life-threatening to her floating or buoyancy or anything like that. She was able to move on her own power once it was restored. She was not in danger of sinking or anything like that, despite being pummeled by all those different rounds and stuff. So they met up with the Washington and the surviving destroyer that limped back. I believe they actually had to scuttle that destroyer too, so I believe it was only the 2 battleships that made it back. And Washington or South Dakota had to go in for repairs, obviously. But I want to show some of the battle damage now. So this is the battle damage from that battle. As you can see, it was pretty severe. In some cases, there's a nice size, hole blown in right here. So what is it? Looking forward to port from frame number 76, wherever that is. I'm not too familiar with where that would be precisely on the ship. This is Washington. That's different, but yeah. So she took a nice sized beating from the Japanese forces there, but didn't end up walking away. So testament to the armor. Even though it was only 12 inches, it did keep her floating. The Kirishima did only have 14-inch guns. It was a Congo class battleship. It was a fast battleship built by the British, not Kirishima, but Congo herself. The lead ship in that class was built by the British in the, I think, early 1900s. Congo. Just to make sure. Class. Just to make extra sure. I think it was like 1916, there we go, 1910. So, yeah. And they were state-of-the-art back in the day. The British actually built the Japanese a far superior battleship than they had at the time. And they did that to learn, what works and what doesn't work. So the Japanese were essentially the guinea pig, too. But anyway, so Congo class, that's what Kirishima was. So 14-inch guns, fairly thin armor, not the thinnest, but she was fast. So remember that triangle. But bottom line is the armor did work the way it should have or intended, and it did fairly well. So a few other notable events was she participated in the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. which was when the Americans basically shot down 400 something Japanese planes that day, and basically ended the Japanese in the air altogether. They were never again a threat in the air. She also was the first battleship to shell the Japanese mainland, and she was there for the signing of the peace treaty, anchored right next to Missouri, where they signed the peace treaty on. Now, Missouri was a Iowa class battleship, so that's the generation right after South Dakota. So, starting with Iowa herself, BB-61, then 62, 63, and 64, and that was it. They did 4 ships of that class too. 4 South Dakotas, 4 Iowas, and I don't know how many North Carolinas. I think might have only been 2 or 3, but it's not many, because they did upgrade to the South Dakotas pretty quickly. So with that said, that concludes this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little fairly quick learning video, I guess. And if you have anyone you want to see or learn about, let me know in the comments below, and I'll definitely do a video on them. I can talk for hours about this. I'm going back to school for a military history degree. I want to focus on naval history, of course. And so, yeah, I can talk for hours about this. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, learned something from it, and look forward to the next video. With that, like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Hopefully it's a figure, something to do with figures. But anyways, catch you later. Bye.